New York City, December 1933. We're at Rockefeller Center with David Sarnoff and Edwin Howard Armstrong, 5.5 years before Sarnoff introduced television at the New York's World Fair. John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s sprawling office complex has been given a holiday makeover to welcome its new tenant, the Radio Corporation of America. RCA's new landlords trucked in a 45-foot Christmas tree, illuminating it with 700 lights that twinkled above the old friends' heads as they walked by. Sarnoff is now graying at the temples, his growing waistline concealed with impeccably tailored suits. Armstrong, still an avid tennis player, remains tall and slim. He's just celebrated his 43rd birthday. Sarnoff will join him in 2 months. For the past 2 decades, Armstrong has been stopping by David Sarnoff's ever-growing offices. In fact, Armstrong's wife Marion had been David Sarnoff's secretary when they'd met. By the 1930s, Sarnoff's lavish spending on NBC's radio studios created many of the 288,000 RCA shareholders. The Depression had cut profits to the point where RCA stocks were no longer paying dividends, and after 6 years and countless millions invested in the development of television, Sarnoff freely admitted it was still years away from becoming a viable business. His detractors mocked him as the televisionary. His friend Edwin Armstrong's detractors called the engineer egotistical, stubborn, and a man who couldn't let the past go. In 1934, Edwin Howard Armstrong was still involved in a patent suit with fellow inventor Lee DeForest over the creation of the first regenerative circuit in 1913. David Sarnoff had repeatedly warned his friend to let the past go in order to build a better future, and the two men often discussed how to solve the problems that had dogged radio. The amplitude modulation signals, or AM, used by radio stations in the 1920s, shared many drawbacks. Among the most serious was that they were subject to significant levels of interference. This interference led to much crackling and hissing at the radio receiver. Edwin Howard Armstrong had been studying this problem since 1914. A theorized way of eliminating the static involved a different form of modulation in which the frequency, or length of the carrier wave, was modulated instead of the amplitude or height. However, mathematicians considering this issue stated categorically that frequency modulation could not solve the problem. Armstrong disagreed. The two men drove to Columbia University. Armstrong led Sarnoff to Philosophy Hall and to the Marcellus Hartley laboratory that Armstrong ran. On a table was a bunch of radio gear laid out in an unusual order. Pointing to one of the two circuits, the major said it was a typically static-prone AM receiver. The other was hooked to a little black box. Armstrong flipped on the second receiver. The faint static coming out of the speaker immediately vanished. The audio quality gained a fuller, richer sound. Armstrong told his friend that a new style of broadband communications was now possible. Networks would be able to carry far more information in this new system than in the older, more narrowband system of AM. Sarnoff immediately made available the RCA lab on the 88th floor of the Empire State Building for Armstrong to continue his experiments in, and also so Sarnoff could keep a watch on him. David Sarnoff told Major Armstrong that this was no ordinary technological upgrade. This new system was an entire revolution. Edwin Howard Armstrong had invented FM.